So I'm delighted to welcome to the channel, all the way from Amsterdam in the Netherlands, one of the biggest personalities in the watch world, a man with a personality so big they had to give him 3 names. It's Alon Ben Joseph of Ace Jewelers and the Real Time Show.
Simon, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored. I'm excited. And are you referring to big because of my size or weight?
Well, neither, but definitely a big personality, a big character, that's for sure. First of all, let's start by please explain to the viewers who you are and also your role in the watch community.
Thank you. So first and foremost, utter watch nerd, watch idiot, WIS, call it whatever you want. I am obsessed with watches and it dominates predominantly all my day, every day. So I have different hats on. I was blessed to be born into a jeweler's family. So the family business is Ace Jewelers. We're based in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, where we have high street boutique. Been doing e-commerce ever since 2007. Doing both the authorized dealer spiel, both with jewelry and watches. We make our own diamond jewelry. Have been doing certified pre-owned since 1975. And the last few years are really steamrolling with cool collabs. So that's great fun. About a decade ago, I co-founded watchbase.com. So that's a website with 2 databases, fully independent. I call it the Wikipedia/IMDb of watches. You can find full specs about watches. And the cool thing is we have a database for watches and calibers, which are independent and linked. So you can reverse engineer by seeing what watch uses what caliber. So let's say this has a 7750 as a base. So when you click on it, you'll see that they use that base, and then you can see what watch uses that caliber. So you can reverse engineer it. So that's a passion project.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Watchbase, but I had no idea that was something that you were involved with. So that's amazing. I mean, it really is a great resource.
Yeah, thank you. So that's a great passion project, and it's being used by a lot of peers in the industry. So that's cool. Had the honor to run Red Bar Crew Amsterdam, which is the only chapter in the Netherlands. GPHG Academy member since they opened that up in 2020. And a year and a half ago, my dear friend Rob Nuds and I have decided to create a fully independent podcast about watches called The Real Time Show. So those are the few things I do in the watch industry.
That's a lot. I mean, I guess you don't have much spare time.
I don't. That's why I look tired. So it's always a lack of sleep. So, but not complaining.
I know the feeling. So in terms of Ace Jewelers, and you said that the business originally started in jewelry, right? So, I mean, Amsterdam is the diamond capital of the world, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah, it used to be. It still has that enigma or that aura, but consumers still think that, yeah.
It's probably been overtaken by Shanghai or somewhere now, right?
Well, the polishing went to Antwerp after Second World War, then it went to Tel Aviv, Bombay, and then China, and the majority is done now in China and India. Yeah.
Right.
Polishing of the diamonds, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so talk to me a little bit about some, because you represent some amazing brands at Ace. So just explain a little bit about some of the brands that you work with.
Yeah, sure thing. So next year we exist 50 years. Quite a evolution in those 50 years, whereas my dad is a master diamond cutter, diamond polisher, and goldsmith, master goldsmith. Started always off with making and designing jewelry, always loved watches. So in the 70s, he started off with Seiko. Early 80s is Swatch, G-Shock, and that's when I came up, because I'm from vintage 79. So you can do the quick math how old I am. And for those that don't want to do the math, I'm already 5 years into my midlife crisis. We went up, and at the peak of our exposure as a retailer, we had 3 high street locations, as total separate e-commerce division. And in that time, we had a lot of big names of the group. So Swatch Group, Richemont, LVMH, independents like Breitling. But in that verticalization of the luxury industry, they all went mono-brand boutique and their own e-com. So we actually lost many brands. And in that evolution, we also proactively said, you know what? We are an independent multi-brand retailer. Let's embrace that independence. And we handed in basically almost all the brands from the big groups. We just hung on to Zenith because we really love Zenith.
Me too.
Although it's part of LVMH. So that's the only one from the big groups we hung on to. Going from the horlogerie, we have Christian van der Klauw, Dutch Fried. So we're the sole retailers for Amsterdam. We just launched a collab that I'm wearing. So that's great fun. I always need to rack my brain. So we have Vulcain, we have NOMOS Glashütte, which we're very, very proud to retail. And I dare to say we have the biggest collection outside of Germany in the world. So we really love that brand. We did 6 collabs with them. I've been nagging them for years. I just got the message last week that we are getting our 7th collab in 2025.
Amazing.
Because our 50th anniversary. So they're rewarding us. Nevada Grenchen, Elko Watch Company, Bremont. We've been the sole retailer in the Netherlands for, if I'm not mistaken, 12 years already.
Okay.
But time flies, so I sometimes lose track of timelines. Sherpa watches, exclusive in the Netherlands. Bozel, exclusive in the Netherlands. So as you see, we always love the niche brands to add some flavor to the high street copy-paste boutiques in the world. Everybody, the same shops, and it's all copy-paste around the world, which is boring, but they create the footfall and the majority of your turnover.
Of course.
We're doing more and more certified pre-owned as well.
I mean, I think, look, I guess a lot of the micro brands and the independents, I think that's where some of the really exciting stuff, to me, seems to be happening in the watch space right now, in terms of collaborations, in terms of...
It is great fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's great fun. It's great fun to work with the entrepreneurs and the people behind the brands. There's energy there. There's creativity there. I always disrespectfully say that within the big groups, it's 80% run by Excel managers, and that's not a compliment. So in that sense, we have regained a lot of joy in what we do on a daily basis at Ace Jewelers.
Just to take a step back slightly, but you also mentioned there that you represent Bremont and have had a long relationship with those guys. And so I put a video out, I guess about 3 or 4 weeks ago, talking about the recent rebrand and the relaunch of Bremont. I don't know if you saw that, but...
I've definitely seen it. It's a very good video.
I'd love to know what your thoughts are as somebody who's been very close to the brand for a long time and obviously a very important retailer for them in your region.
Yeah, so I have a lot of feelings, a lot of thoughts. Both the English brothers, no pun intended, Giles and Nick English, are English, and that's their surname. So they were the co-founders of Bremont, I believe, over 2 decades ago, around 22 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I'm friends with them. Always love what they did. I'm friends with Davide Serrato. So it was interesting to see him come into Bremont as a CEO, not just a designer. Obviously, everybody was in high anticipation to see what he would do with the brand and what products he would design and launch. I maybe I'll tell you the story chronologically because they've received a lot of heat. You've done actually an excellent video about the brand, not just the products, but you being a marketeer. You've also touched upon the branding and the logo and the fonts, whereas I am also very much a fan of fonts, or that's an understatement. I'm actually obsessed about fonts, OCD-ish almost, and love branding. I believe I'm a marketeer as well.
I think there's a designer in there somewhere trying to get out desperately.
It's funny that you say that. You and I have a lot of chats about that. But obviously, I believe, I don't know any watch nerd that doesn't dream of designing their own watch. So yes, that is a dream that my brother Amir and I have. But not to deviate. So in the ramp up to Watches and Wonders this year in Geneva, so April this year, Davide did a lot of interviews with others, and I absorb a lot of watch media because I love to as a watch nerd and as a collector, private collector. He said he's going to bring price points down. So that created expectations. So Tuesday was the first day of Watches and Wonders, PAL Expo, Geneva, Fairgrounds. Rob Nuds and I hit the Fairgrounds. By coincidence, we took that second entrance, a new entrance, that was on the top level. Walk in, boom.
Right in front of Bremont.
Bremont. Nice brown shades. Elegant. New logo, new font. And I'm like, whoa. I'm very sensitive to these things. And then I had this feeling like, ooh, NATO logo. The Pathfinder logo remind me of NATO. The font, I said no go. And by coincidence, Davide walked out. Hey, ciao, va bene, hugs, kisses, how are you doing? Da 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 da. Boom, watch in my face. So he had the Terra Nova on his new bracelet, Power Reserve. So I was taken aback. I'm like, oh, cushion shaped, which I like. I immediately noticed the 3D cut luminous markers, the numbers. The bracelet was unique. I'm like, oh, it as you in England say, tickled my fancy. Do you say that?
Yeah, that is. We do say that.
So I'm like, oh, it
terrible expression.
Yeah, I know, but it piqued my interest. You know, I mean, watches are like art. Art needs to do one sole thing: is stir up emotions, and watches are mechanical art. So if it doesn't stir up any emotions, positive or negative, I think you missed your mark.
I mean, you've got to be careful because you can probably go to prison for tickling someone's fancy. But
yes, I know, especially in Sweden. If they only just say you tickled somebody's fancy, you can. But you know, let's be realistic. These watches need to arouse us. So and then he pulled out of his pocket of his jacket, another one, and that was the ceramic new aqua. No, what is it called? The Supermarine.
Supermarine, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so why did I say aqua? Because my first initial reaction was, nah. And why? Because it reminded me of the Aqua race by Tegoya. So I said to Davide as a joke, I'm like, hey, Davide, do you want to be the peacemaker in these volatile times? Are you the NATO of the watchmaking industry? So that's the joke I made about the logo. And then he said, it's a pathfinder. And I immediately understood what he was trying to do because the visuals were present in the booth. And it was very much about what a lot of watch brands do today. And Breitling made it popular under George Kern's helm. Air, land, sea. So I understood he wanted to take away of that pilot's watch stigma. They obviously had pilot watches. There's nothing wrong with that. I loved the propeller logo. So the airplane propeller logo.
Yeah.
He took that away. My problem is, and I think you said that as well in your great video, the Pathfinder logo takes a lot of real estate on the dial.
Yeah, it's very tall.
It's 360, so it's tall and wide. So that's an issue. The font was very chunky. So together, it's very dominant visually. And then by then I didn't know that he didn't apply that to the whole brand identity, meaning corporate communication had a new logo and font, but the watches didn't. So when I came back at 5 o'clock, I was taken aback by that. I was disappointed. I said, oh, that's another link reference to Breitling, because George Curran came, clipped literally Breitling's wings of the logo, went to the B, which was there, and under Schneider's helm, the old Montbriand Navi timers used to have the B logo. So it's not something new, but George Curran listened to the market and brought back the wings. But it seems a bit all over the place. The feeling I got with Davide is twofold. On the one hand, after 30 minutes into the meeting, which he unfortunately didn't make because he was stuck in an interview, so I never encountered him again. So I didn't discuss my analysis with him in person yet at the fair or on the phone on a video call yet. So 30 minutes into the meeting and getting the gist of where they were going, I got disappointed because there I learned that there were still old models and they didn't apply the new logo on the old models. It wasn't clear if they're all going to be faded out or not. It wasn't clear what's happening with the ENG movement, so the proprietary movement. So,
which I think, as I understand, has been shelved now.
Yeah, I watch out with the manufacturer term because Bremont once burnt their fingers on that term. So they bought the IP from Anne Plus, the Horage clan.
Yeah.
But it's proprietary to Bremont, and the aim is or was to manufacture them both in Silverstone and Henley-on-Thames. So that wasn't clear, and then from strategy point of view, pricing, I say today, both as a retailer and a collector and a journalist, the old 1,000 price point bracket of being a lot of bang for your buck, cheap or expensive. I don't use the terms cheap or expensive, but it's a perception of what is a lot of bang for your buck. The old €1,000 is now €2,000 in VAT. What I also find annoying that all these watch brands doing fairs talk about Swiss francs ex VAT, because VAT in Switzerland is around 8%, US is around 8%, depending on the states. But in Europe,
20%,
20-25%. Yeah. So talking about a 2,500 price point ex VAT is 3K. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, and then 7.5, 10 are very important brackets. Different consumers, big competition going on. So I was also a bit disappointed that if he walked away from the manufacture and doing a lot in Switzerland and outsourcing and Selitas and nothing proprietary, but still around 3K, I said, yeah, you push down the price a bit.
Because in his interviews that he gave after he was appointed into that role, he was very clear about talking about releasing a range, an entry-level range that would be kind of around maximum 2,500, yeah? And I think, isn't there only one watch from the new Terra Nova series that is at that price?
If I'm not mistaken, there are basically 4 Terra Novas, so 338, bigger, with a bezel, GMT and Chrono, so 4. I believe the entry level model is the 38 3-hander leather strap or textile strap with, if I'm not mistaken, is around 2,500 sterling ex VAT. That's 3.
Yeah.
So and why am I disappointed? Because then you kept yourself in the raw realm of Tudor, Tag Heuer, because Tag Heuer moved up market. It's not that cheap anymore. I mean, you can't get a quartz Formula 1 below 1,000 anymore. I don't think they go below 1,500 anymore. Quartz. So Aqua Race is also around 3 today. So in that sense, I was maybe disappointed, but maybe because my expectations were managed differently. Then product. I was intrigued by the cushion shape. I didn't expect that. You don't expect a cushion shape case for tools watches. because he proclaims in his marketing that it's an outdoor brand. It's a Gada watch, so go anywhere, do anything watch.
An adventure watch almost, isn't it? They're portraying it as.
Yeah. And I personally love I see what you're wearing.
Oh.
So wearing a Monza.
Monza.
So I love cushy shaped watches. And it seems that the British watchmakers love them. What comes to mind is Fears with the Brunswick, different watch. It's really a pillow, whereas this has sharper edges. What I did love is the new bracelet. It's new. It's not been done. So I really, really love that. Of the Terra Novas, my favorite is the one with the power reserve because it's asymmetrical. There's a lot going on. It works with the logo, so it's playful. What I didn't understand is a gold chronograph 30K. What's affordable about that? A tourbillon with a hemisphere vibe, which he did already at Mont Blanc. So that I didn't grasp. I loved the old Supermarines. So how can you do better than that? But I feel they went a step back. So these are my initial thoughts. I need to still let it sink in. We have a Dutch saying that literally means a beautiful watch is a sold watch. I came back Monday to our boutique. First consumer walking to the door. Hey, I was yesterday in Geneva as a consumer. I want to order 2 watches. So I said, what? Tangente 38 by NOMOS, the Super 31, and a Bremont Terra Nova 38. So I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Totally different watches, but it caught his attention. So who am I to say what's good or not good? I am very, very hopeful that it will go well. I think they have a lot of work to do. They got a lot of bashing after the fair. One negative thing and maybe one positive thing, and maybe we should move on. I didn't like what Giles and Nick did, meaning they've never in their life posted on social media together. They're very active on both their handle. They put a post up on Friday, so that's 4 days after the big reveal of the new Bremont, which seemed like they wished David and a new ownership and leadership great success, but they basically distanced themselves. So
I saw that.
My humble opinion, in my opinion, they damaged more than they did good. So that's something that I found odd. And that's an understatement. Positive thing though. Davide corrected a wrong, in my humble opinion. The English brothers never joined the British Watchmakers Alliance. I don't know the finer details of it, but he joined as Bremont, which is, I believe, a very good thing. So my feeling is he had a lot of pressure on his shoulders. He had a lot to do in very little time, because I think in less than a year, he had to put a new Bremont there. He has a very, very, very hardcore investor, celebrity investor, Bill Ackman. So I guess there's a lot of pressure there. But on the other hand, if it's correct that he invested 60 million, that's a lot in the watch industry. But for him, I think it's just a pet project. So it could be that he hopefully has a long-term scope there. And I really, really hope it will work out, because I think he still has a lot of work to do.
Yeah. I agree. And just I guess in the amount of time since making the video that I made, and a few people reached out to me after that, some of whom seem to be very close to people at Bremont. And I guess maybe what I hadn't appreciated at the time was that, I knew that they hadn't made profit for a number of years, but I don't think I really appreciated perhaps quite how serious the situation might have been there. And I think that they clearly felt they needed to do something and do something big. And I you've got to respect anybody for coming into a business, recognizing that there are issues, been bold enough to say we're going to do some big things and we're going to make some big changes. But at the same time, it feels to me maybe that the changes that they made perhaps were in some of the wrong places. And, the logo for a start, let's say, okay, yeah, I get that it was quite aviation themed originally, the old logo. And I understand the desire to broaden the messaging out across air, land and sea, across these three things. But look, they made the Supermarine watches, which are dive watches, when they had the old branding, and those were probably the watches that sold the most for them. So the branding, in my opinion, didn't stop people from, because it had propellers on it, didn't stop people from buying those dive watches. And so I think maybe they've put too much focus on, we've got to change the brand because it's got to be seen to be A, new, and B, more representative of all of the ranges of things that we do. But actually, I think consumers would have lived and probably been happier with the older brand. What they really want is more new, exciting products and, perhaps better value, better prices. And so I think that they maybe just put their focus a little bit in the wrong area. But I do wish them well. And, they are a great British brand. It's a shame that they weren't one of the founding members of the British Watchmakers Alliance, because they really should have been. And, wish them well for the future. I really do hope that they're here in 50 years' time.
I concur with you, and I really hope so too. And I think they will. I'm not worried in that sense. And now that I'm listening to you and think of your background, I think you should do it, or any other journalist listening to this recording. We should actually do a research whenever a new CEO steps into a watch brand, how many of them immediately change the logo? Because David did it with HYT, the last brand he was with, and the new CEO kept it. So my friend Vahed, he kept it. At Mont Blanc, he obviously couldn't change the logo. That was too epic.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's interesting. And I always compare it to, like a dog or a cat marking their territory. It seems like, hey, out with the new, out with the old and welcome to the new. So it seems like they do that to both mark a new era. It also says, hey, mark their territory. And I guess, let's not forget, he's not a classic CEO, he's a designer. It shows also all-round skills that he just doesn't know how to design watches. He's a designer, and the real designers can design anything. I think there's more to it. So it's actually interesting to analyze it from a psychological point of view. But let me shut up now. You're the host, and I'll shut up and answer your questions.
No, this is great. This is great conversation, and I think there's a lot of interest in this subject. And look, just one final thing to say about the whole thing about Bremont is, if nothing else, they've had everybody talking about them. So, what's the old saying? No publicity is bad publicity.
That's Donald Trump for you.
Yeah, exactly. They've certainly got people talking. So, but anyway, let's move on a little bit, because what I really wanted to also talk about with you today is some of the amazing collaborations that you've done. So you very kindly sent me this piece over a few weeks ago from FREDERIQUE CONSTANT. So the Highlife worldtimer, Ace Jewelers collaboration, right? Which is an amazing piece. And I've really loved having it here. But I'd love to really hear from you a little bit about how this came to be, and maybe the design process and how involved you were in that, because I think there's you've really made your mark on this watch. But I'd love to hear that from you.
Thank you for that. And before I do so, my mom told me it's very rude to answer a question with a question, but this opportunity begs me to do that. You are an independent watch journalist, and a very good one at it, because you speak your mind and you are very critical, but in a positive sense. So to show our viewers that this is not a sponsored episode and we're really chatting as two friends, because we got acquainted through the amazing community around the blog to watch. Thank you, Rick, for that, and Ariel. That's how we met. We talked a lot, we chatted a lot, and we share a lot of similar passions. And I guess we also share the passion for being unfiltered and have a critical point of view, or at least create a SWOT analysis. So before you do so, you said you liked to watch, but I bet you there were things you didn't like, and I really would love to hear them.
There are far more things that I like than there are things I don't like about it. So let's just start with that. I think the size of the watch is beautiful. I think it's 41 millimeter, right?
Yep.
I've had I've loved the design of the Highlife collection for a long time. I've really admired it. But this is the first time that I've been hands-on with one of the Highlifes. So I've been speaking to the marketing team at FREDERIQUE CONSTANT in the UK here, on and off for probably a year. And they also represent other brands within the Citizen Group. So I've had some other pieces from them to do reviews with. But this is the first time getting up close and personal with the Highlife. And I was really, really impressed. The one thing that I think you notice straight away is how well made it feels. I mean, it's solid, it's weighty, it feels like a much more expensive watch than I know it is. I also love the fact that you did the worldtimer, because worldtimers are there's just something very romantic about the worldtimer. You know, seeing those cities around the dial, you know, it takes you back to a certain era, if you understand what I mean. And so I've always had an affinity with worldtimers anyway, so I was very drawn to it because of that. The colours as well, I think the black and the red, I think just work really, really well. But I did want to ask you a couple of questions about the colour choice in a moment. And I think the bracelet is beautiful. It's really well finished. The mixture of polishing and brushing is really, really well done. The butterfly clasp, and not everyone is a fan of butterflies, but this one is done really, really well. And finally, I guess, you know, just talking about the movement for a second, which you can see through this beautiful display case back. I don't know how well that's picking up, but I'm going to overlay some footage of the watch over this. You know, you've got this beautiful looking movement. I mean, this is a proprietary movement, right? Yeah,
correct. So that's something I wanted to ask you. So you said it's very qualitative. What were your ideas or feelings and expectations around Frédérique Constant versus seeing it in real life? Because how do you perceive the brand Frédérique Constant? And we just talked about price points, Bremont. It is bang for your buck. It isn't. This is expensive. This isn't, right? So where did you position Frédérique Constant before and after this experience?
I think my opinion of them was maybe shaped a little bit by what I've heard other people say about the brand in the past. And I've always heard people speak about them as being good value, you know, and well made. And sure enough, this really is. But this is from the same group as Alpina, right? Correct. And I think this is something they share in common with Alpina as well, is I think those are two very underrated brands in terms of how well made the watches are. I think I've been hands-on with a number of Alpinas and done some videos on those, and those have also been beautifully made, really nicely finished movements on them. And you definitely get the same feeling with this watch. This feels like it could be a much more expensive piece. One thing I did want to say, actually, and it's something that only occurred to me, so I love the shape of the case on this. And it's kind of has that cushion shape case, which I know you and I are both a big fan of. But something that only really occurred to me just as I was looking at it again now is the side profile of it reminds me very much of a Rolex Daytona. I think it's got that very smooth kind of curved side profile. And I think that's a really nice touch, actually. So, but they've, you know, clearly done something very unique with it. The one thing I would criticize about it, and it's quite a small thing really, and it's also maybe subjective is the wrong word, but it's probably only going to be an issue for, you know, 2% of people who've got wrists as tiny as I have. You know, I mean, my wrists are like a mosquito. But is that the case with the integrated bracelet on it, when on my wrist it just feels a little bit long. The lug-to-lug length feels a little bit long. But if you put this, so you also sent it with the rubber strap. And when you put this on it, it wears perfectly on me.
Interesting. Yeah. And value-wise, so Frederique Constant's sweet spot for quartz is around 1,000, automatic around 2,000. Proprietary movements or manufactured, they are manufactured, are around 2.5 or 300. So this retails at the regular RRP. So we always price our collabs at the same price point as a regular model, as a goodwill gesture to our collectors, as a thank you. So this is 4,295 euros in VAT. Sterling is probably around 4,000. Ex-VAT is around 3.5, let's say. So if we ship outside of the EU. What do you think about that price point? Because we made our life difficult by choosing double the value of Frederique Constant sweet spot. But you asked me how did it come about. I didn't have another choice than to choose this model because we started our journey doing collabs with NOMOS. About 7 years ago, I believe, we did our first collab with NOMOS. That was our first collab ever. We've had the honor to do 6 in 5 years. But then we had a dilemma because we became a one-trick pony. I call it the David Schwimmer of the Friends TV series. So only one role we could play. So we broke that mold last year by doing 4 collabs. The last one was this Frederique Constant. One of our most popular collabs with NOMOS was the Zurich Weltzeit. So the worldtimer. I also love worldtimers. I love GMTs, worldtimers, 24-hour discs. Think of the Cosmonaut, that's Scott Carpenter used to wear. Yeah. Raketa. Oh, by the way, Raketa we also sell. You see, it's another brand I forgot. So we wanted to do a second chapter to that worldtimer. And if you think about it, who does affordable worldtimers? Proper worldtimers.
No, that's a very good point. And that's something I hadn't really, when you talk about value, that's actually something that hadn't really occurred to me, is that if you compare it to other pieces on the market, actually you're right, that the worldtimer complication does tend to sit in a much higher price bracket, right?
Exactly. And then manufacture as well. Because the coolest one that is affordable is the Omega CMOS, the Aquaterra worldtimer with that beautiful globe on it. But I believe that today retails past the 10K already. So there's a gigantic gap.
Yeah. I mean, there are other watches with world time rotating bezels, right? But that's not...
Yeah,
that's different, isn't it?
Count.
That's not part of the movement.
That doesn't count. Yeah. So for us, it was a no-brainer. I love the monolithic caliber by Frederique Constant, so the high-frequency silicon hairspring. But they simply don't have enough calibers. So that was an immediate no. So you asked me how we came about. We are not Frederique Constant retailers. So we're not authorized dealers. I'm good friends with the current CEO, Dutchman, Niels Eggerding, for over 2 decades already. So I was hanging out in his office in Geneva at the manufacturer in the factory. And then I was just naughty. I'm like, hey, Niels, what would it take to do a collab together? So basically, he did me a favor. We actually jammed out the idea very quickly, worked with his team, designed it. We, on our collabs, have different teams. So we work on the Amsterdam team because we're based in Amsterdam. And the Amsterdam logo is built up by the colors black, red, and white.
Right.
The crest are the 3 Andreas crosses, which stand for the slogan of Amsterdam, which is heroic, steadfast, and compassionate. So you could use the heroic as valiant. Think of the French slogan of égalité, fraternité, liberté. Probably mixing up order, but so that's where it comes from. So we did a few of these.
So this is the three red X's on the dial, which I think is fantastic. But maybe not to be, perhaps people who aren't so familiar with Amsterdam and think of it as a certain reputation might think it's a triple X watch, right?
It's the funny thing is we were very scared to do those triple X's the first time ever, because the irony of it is people think that we sell 80% of our Amsterdam collabs to locals, meaning either Amsterdam citizens or Dutch citizens. But the matter of the fact is we ship almost 90% of our collabs abroad, and the Amsterdam versions go 80% to North America.
That's incredible.
To non-Dutch citizens.
Right.
So
do they go to kind of like Pennsylvania or something where, there's a lot of Dutch heritage there, or?
There's a lot of Dutch heritage in Canada and indeed Pennsylvania, but it's not even that. And so and then I was worried, would they link it to X-rated? But that connotation is not there. So that's very ironic. We wanted something sporty, elegant. We took off the globe that is usually indented in the normal version. So we took that out to calm things down. We worked on the red and white play. We wanted the 3Xs there. And Niels actually surprised me as a token of appreciation. He made them 3D. So originally they were printed.
Right, okay.
On the dial. Yep. So that's something cool that he did as a special touch. So yeah, we are very honored, very blessed. We made 100 pieces. There's still a few pieces left. We're talking now for chapter 2 within Frederique Constant for collab. And because of this tremendous success, we're now rolling into becoming an authorized dealer.
That's amazing. I mean, what a story. Yeah.
So it's actually reverse engineering, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's fantastic. And I can see why it's been a real success, this piece. And it's exciting to think about what the next collab might be. And just one of the other small things actually about this, I love little details. It's the little details on watches and on collabs that I think make them really special. But it's that when you notice that at the 12 o'clock position on the world time scale, instead of having Geneva, you've got Amsterdam. And I think that's really, really cool little touch.
Yeah, and that's very sensitive with the Swiss to take off Geneva.
I reckon it must have been.
Well, I think it helps that Dutch founded Frederique Constant and the CEO is Dutch. So I think that I don't know if I would have gone away with it if it was a different Swiss brand. But with Glashütte, Germany, it was also difficult because it's the same time zone. So we had to take off Berlin off the dial.
It reminds me of you've probably seen there's a Hodinkee interview with Ed Sheeran talking about watches, and he shows I think it's a Patek that he had customized, a worldtimer, and he had the place of his birth, I think, or where he lives in Suffolk on the dial. But the difference is Amsterdam is a big major city. This place where Ed Sheeran is from is this tiny, tiny little place that even most people in the east of England probably haven't heard of, right? So it was quite a nice touch.
No, it's lovely. It's lovely. It's lovely that Patek does those things. And they always grant those special editions to their retailers that have an anniversary. They will take off a city to put their hometown there. So these things make collecting special, makes brands special. And that shows you that Frederique Constant is really independent. Because Niels doesn't need to ask HQ in Japan if he can do this stuff. He really runs the two brands. Well, technically 3, because Atelier de Monaco is also part of the Frederique Constant group. So the business unit is a trifold brand portfolio, which Niels runs. And Oliver is the general manager of Alpina. He has also a lot of autonomy and freedom to do whatever he wants. And that's beautiful to see because they basically run it as a entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
That is very, very cool. So look, I mean, obviously you've done lots and lots of collabs. The collab that I wanted to ask you about is actually one of your most recent ones. And that's the one that you've done with Bamford, right?
Yes, I have it here.
That's very cool. So that's the B80, is that right?
Correct.
The field watch.
So this was or is the most current model within the brand Bamford London, because a lot of people get confused. Mr. George Bamford started out customizing watches, rolled into the brand Bamford Watch Department, which still exists today. So with that brand, he does two things. He is authorized by almost all LVMH brands. So I'm talking about Tag Heuer, Zenith, Bulgari, maybe Dior, but I'm not quite sure. He is allowed to customize them. So consumers can go to Bamford, purchase the watch from them and customize to their specs. And that's authorized by the brands. Before that, he used to do those customizations without an authorization. Today, he only does that. And he does collabs with other brands. Think of Chopard, G-Shock, Frank Wheeler, etc. Then his second arm or his second brand is Bamford London. With Bamford London, he just makes his watches. High-end, Swiss-made, no cutting corners. And with that platform, he does collabs as well. So he and I became friends many years ago. We used to meet in Geneva, London. My wife is from London, so I'm often in London. We hung out at the Hive. He's a great dad. He loves kids. So when my son was 4, I brought him around during the lockdowns. So he took my son for a 30 minutes tour of the Hive. And that's where we bought also the Sesame Street watch. So my first Bamford ever, I bought my son.
I can see why you two guys get on so well, though, also, because you're both so high energy. I mean, you know, George is like, he just doesn't stop, right?
He's sheer passion. People think that it's a persona or a celeb behavior, but he's not. I can vouch for that. At 24/7, what you see is what you get. He is also crazy about watches. He idolizes watches. He idolizes everybody in the watch industry. Nothing is played. What you see is what you get. He works tremendously hard. You would think he has an army behind him, which he doesn't, but a fantastic team. But up until recently, he didn't even have a PA, which he really needs. He does a lot himself. When you DM him on Bamford Watch Department, that's actually
him, isn't it? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, he does it. He does it. He runs on sheer passion, and that I respect, appreciate, and love. So when he came out with the B80, I immediately fell in love because I love mil-spec watches, military watches, field watches. I love titanium, and that was this watch. So I immediately ordered the burnt orange one. Ordered it as a private collector, just love it. So got it, and then when we hung out afterwards, I was again just being naughty. I said, hey, George, what would it take to do a collab together? So he looked at me, said, what would you like to do? So I said, B80. So he was taken aback because the 347 is the most popular case for him. That works well. I love it. Is a semi-mono poussoir. For me, mono poussoirs are when the push is literally in the crown.
Yeah.
So people mix those terms.
It's the Solita SW510 movement, right, in that one, isn't it?
Fantastic watch. I love the red bar version. So I'm still nagging him if he has one lingering in the Hive because I
love
want
the
that
original
one.
blue version, the Bamford blue version with the forged carbon works really, really well. But also,
it's beautiful.
When I was at the Hive, I saw they I shot with the Michelin edition that they did, and I love so many things. I love the strap on that, which I love so many things about it, apart from the little checkered chapter ring, which I think it was just for me, it was just a little bit too much, just a bit too distracting, but such a great concept.
Yeah. So you see that everything they do is run on passion, respect for watch heritage, and he's building a brand. This is not a money grab. This is legacy. And that's what I appreciate and love. So he was taken aback and actually surprised that I wanted to be 80. Obviously, he loved that. He also loves tool watches and oddball watches. So he says, what are you thinking? So I started, because I was surprised that he said yes. So I started just spitballing ideas. And I said, well, you created 9 dials for the B80, but if it's a tribute to a field watch, and British watchmakers shouldn't make field watches. I mean, think about Vertex and etc. And also Bremont with the dirty dozen tributes of the MOD trilogy. I said, why didn't you make a real field watch? I mean, where is the 24 hours chapter ring? Well, the big hours are there, and the minutes track. So he was taken back. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't think to do it. Why do you want to do it? I said, yeah, dude, we have to. And then we both love black watches. And that's how he started off his career, right? Blackening Rolexes. But I dislike PVD and DLC. So I said, can you do ceramic? He's like, no, I can't yet. Can you do forged carbon? He says, no, in this case yet. I said, okay, so what do you think that we take the disadvantage of coatings, which is if you nick it, scratch it, you have a problem. You can't fix it. I said, why don't we proactively scratch each case? He's like, I love it. So that was a go. So we had the layout. And then he said, Alon, do you love ghost dials? I think you do. I said, yeah, dude, I love them. So these three elements, so the dial is a bit of a ghost dial tribute. It isn't really. So we age the cases. Every case is manually aged by Bamford watchmakers at the Hive in Mayfair. Everything is produced in Switzerland. Calibers, cases, glass, strap. He doesn't cut corners. So everything is aged differently, even the clasp.
So cool.
The buckle. Even. So no cutting corners. So we really jammed out this idea within one session. We had to dot the I's. What strap? What do we do with case back? So, and that shows also the we love to have fun, and we love humor and a sense of humor. And I love British humor. It's very close to Dutch humor. So we said, hey, why don't, because he has these crazy cards, right? I mean, you know them from, so he always walks around fairs with these cards.
Yeah.
Well, I said to him, why don't we play with that? So then we played on the ace branding and wrote your ace. So it all ties in together. And in the packaging and marketing, we said something like, you're scared of your first scratch. Don't worry, we took care of that. And then the second layer is we added a little vial with tools and sandpaper in there. And we wrote something like, if we haven't done it well enough, go finish the job yourself.
Put your own scratches on it. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's so much fun. And then we launched this about 2 weeks ago. George came out with his team to Amsterdam. We did a huge launch party in our boutique. We had over 80 people come. Great fun. He worked harder than I did. It's my boutique, and he worked the store. He is nonstop.
Absolutely. It was funny you to talk about the finishing on the case and the scratches and all this kind of thing, because I remember when I was last at the Hive, and you go right to the top floor and he's got his watchmakers, and as you say, he hasn't got a big team. It's just a few guys, and they clearly have a lot of work on their plate. And I just had these visions of like George walking up there one day and saying, right, come on guys, now you've got to spend hours scratching all of these 200-300 watches.
No, but that's literally how it went and goes. So they all work tremendously hard there. A lot of passion, great people. So because of this success, we are now becoming Bamford London dealers as well. So,
fantastic.
Another example of reverse engineering. So and all these relationships, I call it the network economy, are based on mutual respect, mutual passion, and want to have fun, and that needs to radiate to consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Alon, I mean, you are clearly a guy who has a real deep running passion for watches, and we could talk for hours. We do talk a lot, actually, don't we, on WhatsApp about watches constantly. But I just wanted to really thank you for coming on here today. It's great to chat with you about all of these things. Those collabs that you're doing are amazing. Can't wait to see what's coming next. But look, just before we round things out, please just tell the viewers where they can find you, both in the store and online.
So for retail, collabs, Ace Jewelers, it's the American spelling, so ACEJEWELERS, so 1L.com. Socials is the same, at Ace Jewelers. Watchbase you can find at watchbase.com. The Real-Time Show also is therealtime.show. That's both the URL as the Instagram handle.
And you on Instagram personally, because your personal Instagram account is fantastic as well. I see so many watches on there that I just go, wow, I love that.
Yeah, so my handle is just my three names. So Alon Ben Joseph, at Alon Ben Joseph. And that's really an eclectic collection of everything. I post there whatever I like as a retailer, collector, journalist, whatever passes my hands related to watches and some jewelry, I just post there. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
No, Alon, look, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for coming on the channel.
Simon, the honor and pleasure. Yes, the honor and pleasure was really totally mine. Thank you for having me. But thank you also to our dear viewers for taking the time to sit and listen to my 1 hour of gibberish.
No, not at all. And look, I think if they enjoy the show, hopefully we're going to get lots of likes, maybe a few new subscribers. And if we get enough, you'll have to come back on for a second.
Would be my honor to come back. I really enjoy these talks, and I love talking to you, Simon. So compliments to you and whatever you do on Escapement 24, because the real independent voices are becoming more and more rare nowadays. So
yeah, well, we've got to try and keep it real.
Indeed. So you should come on the Real Time show.
Definitely. That sounds like a plan. Cheers.
Cheers.